Good afternoon, everyone. I am Ward 2 Councilmember Brooke Pinto, and it is my honor to stand before you today in honoring our first responders with the September 11th Emergency and First Responders Remembrance and Recognition Resolution of 2020. I am here today on behalf of my colleague, the Ward 3 Councilmember Mary Che, who has led this resolution for the last 10 years. As we come together to acknowledge the courage, the bravery, and the sacrifice of our first responders who gave selflessly on this day 19 years ago and are committed to giving all who they could a second chance at life, in honor of the memory of those who have fallen, let us please pause for a moment of silence. Thank you. If we have learned anything in recent times, it is that our first responders' commitment to giving all that they can to anyone they can still stands strong. And we are seeing evidence of this each day as they work to keep our communities safe during this public health pandemic. One of the leading gentlemen in this effort is the district's very own Gregory M. Dean, our long-serving chief of the DC Fire and EMS Department. Chief Dean, we are grateful not only for the service that you have given to all district residents and visitors, but we are blessed because you have left an example that will endure in this department and continue to inspire great service for years to come. Congratulations on your retirement. We are thrilled to be joined today by Mayor Bowser, who has been steadfastly committed to supporting our first responders, and we are grateful to be with you here today. At this time, I would like to invite our Mayor, Muriel Bowser, to the podium.
Good morning, everyone, and I want to thank Councilmember Pinto for leading us in that moment of silence. I also want to recognize Councilmember Mary Che for her commitment to DC's bravest, and in recognizing DC's bravest each year with all of us on this day, on September 11th. I want to recognize you, Chief Donnelly, and all the men and women of DC Fire and EMS who demonstrate to us each and every day what bravery is, who are at the other end of a call when DC residents may be at their most challenged moments. And they know when they make that call that proud men and women will show up to help them. There are fires, there are medical emergencies, there are 70-year rains and floods, and the chief just told me that we saw over 90 calls at the same time to help stranded pedestrians and motorists just yesterday. And we also remember the day 19 years ago when we were called on to help our fellow Americans at the Pentagon, right from this very station. We remember the young people, our young people, and teachers who lost their lives on that day, part of the DCPS family, our students, Asia Cotton, Bernard Brown, Rodney Dickens, and our teachers, Sarah Clark, Hilda Taylor, and James Debonair. We remember the firefighters, the police officers, the first responders who ran into a burning building that would later collapse, where more than 2,000 Americans died. We remember the men and women who went to work at the Pentagon like they did every single day to keep our nation safe. We remember the brave Americans who sacrificed their own lives to save us, probably in Washington, who took down a plane in the middle of a field in Pennsylvania. When I look around Engine 16 today, I'm reminded of another very difficult moment in our history and the courage and the compassion that allows us to move forward each and every day. The men and women of DC Fire and EMS represents these values every day, on every call. We also recognize our friends who support our first responders in this difficult work, like Chef Jose Andres, who I know is with us in the World Central Kitchen, that is with us and with our fellow humans all over the world at times of tragedy. They travel around the world to cities and towns in crisis. I want to commend 9/11 Day for helping transform this annual day of remembrance into a day of doing good work, for teaming up with the World Central Kitchen to honor our first responders with 5,000 locally cooked meals that will be delivered throughout the day. This year, we find ourselves tapping into that same source of courage and compassion that we needed 19 years ago. This time, our nation approaches 200,000 lives lost to a virus that has torn apart families, upended communities, destroyed businesses, destroyed livelihoods, and already caused so much grief and trauma. Chef Andres and his team have already given out over 1 million meals during this pandemic to DC residents, and we want to thank you for all that you do. We will hear from the chairman of the council, followed by Chef Jose Andres, and then we will hear from Ryan Walls, Vice President of Strategic Partnerships. And at the conclusion, I will ask Chief Donnelly, on behalf of all of the men and women of DC Fire and EMS, to accept our proclamation on the Day of Remembrance. Chairman Mendelson and members of the council.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good afternoon to everyone. I want to acknowledge my colleagues, Councilmember Brooke Pinto from Ward 2, Councilmember Charles Allen from Ward 6, who's also the chair of our Committee on Judiciary and Public Safety. I also want to acknowledge the interim fire chief, Donnelly, and I'm not sure he's here, but to thank Chief Dean for his years of service to the district. This event, I should begin by saying that the council, at its last legislative meeting, adopted a ceremonial resolution, which Councilmember Pinto referred to. Ordinarily, at an event like this, we would present it, but these days, with the distancing and virtual meetings, we don't print out our ceremonial resolutions any longer. But it is important that we did that, and we do that every year. It was introduced by Councilmember Che and most of our colleagues. And to honor first responders for their tremendous commitment to serving the district, and to remember the emergency workers who dutifully served their country in the face of danger on September 11th, 2001. That event happened 19 years ago. With the passage of time, the details are forgotten. 4 passenger airplanes were hijacked and turned into missiles. 2 targeted the World Trade Center, 1 crashed into the Pentagon, and the 4th was thought to be headed toward the White House, but instead crashed in Pennsylvania when the passengers thwarted the hijackers. Altogether, there were 2,977 deaths and over 25,000 injuries, the single deadliest terrorist attack in our country's history and perhaps the history of the world. The victims of the Pentagon crash included 3 D.C. school children and 3 teachers, whose names the mayor read a few minutes ago. They had been going to California for an ecology conference. It is important that we remember those who died, nameless and unknown to most of us here, but ordinary individuals like all of us here. They were completely innocent. They could have been us. It is also important that we remember the first responders. While thousands ran from danger, the first responders did what they are supposed to do for us: run toward the danger. 72 police officers were killed, 343 firefighters died. They gave their lives for us. Even though Washington, D.C. itself was spared, There are lessons to be learned and remembered by us. How our own public safety agencies, Fire and EMS, MPD, HCEMA, can better respond, and more importantly, what they might do to thwart future terrorist attacks. We must never forget. That is why we are here today. Thank you.
This time, we would like to acknowledge our colleague, Councilmember Charles Allen from Ward 6.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Pinto, Mr. Chairman, Ms. Mayor, Chief Donnelly, Mr. Andreas, and everybody gathered here. It's hard to imagine a little bit that 19 years has passed. I think for everybody in this room, we can remember exactly what that morning looked like right here in the district. With bright blue skies, I can remember exactly where I was as the news came in. It's a little bit hard to imagine as well that 19 years have passed and that in the not too distant future, we're going to have men and women that are serving in our fire and EMS department that weren't even born when this attack happened. Which is all the more reason why I think having events like this, memorials and commemorations like this are so important, because we have to ensure that when we say never forget, it's more than a hashtag, that it truly is a recognition of the hard work and the sacrifice of the men and women serving our city and serving our nation in what they sacrificed that day. I know that I'm grateful for that, and I know that that day is exemplified time and time again, though, in the actions that we see on behalf of the district, whether that be incredible floods that the men and women responded to amazingly well yesterday, whether that is a pandemic that is deeply impacting our city and so many others, and the hard work that goes into that. Day in and day out, we know we can count on the men and women serving our city, but it is incredibly important that we also take the time out to remember, to honor, and to thank the sacrifice that goes into all of those actions. So I'm deeply grateful for that, Chief Donnelly. I want to give a little shout out for Chief Dean as well and thank him for his many years of service to Dabney, my friend with Local 36, representing many of the men and women. It's a heartfelt thank you from the entire city. And of course to Chef, your work, not just for our first responders, but I know he gets a lot of the accolades, rightly so, but he's also in the trenches doing the work. I know I've had the opportunity to walk with him in one of our senior buildings in Ward 6, where just without much fanfare, he's handing out the meals and making sure that seniors who are trapped inside their homes and isolated are getting a healthy, nutritious meal and helping support a restaurant. So we're deeply grateful for your hard work there as well. And as the chair of the Committee on Judiciary and Public Safety, it's an honor to be able to work with the men and women of the fire department and all of our first responders, extending to our police and our call takers and everybody who's involved in that rapid response to help take care of us. So thank you all very much, and thank you for being here today.
So thank you, Charles. And I realized as I was sitting there, council member, that I've totally screwed up the lineup. So I'm going to get it straight now. And I am going to turn to Ryan Walls, who's the Vice President of Strategic Partnerships for the 9/11 Day. And then we will hear from Chef Andres. And following that, I will come back to introduce Dabney Hudson and the Fire Chief. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Bowser, for that kind introduction. It's an honor to be here with you and the fine men and women of DC Fire and EMS. Thank you also to Councilmember Pinto and Che for including our organization in what is really a beautiful September 11th tradition. As many of you know, September 11th is a federally recognized National Day of Service. Each year, more than 15 million people across the country and really the world participate in some form of good deeds or volunteerism. As the nonprofit tasked with implementing this National Day of Service, we are committed to turning this tragic day into a day of doing good. We remember, honor, and pay tribute to members of our 9/11 community, including friends and loved ones lost, by joining together in unity and service on this day. We pledge in their names to make the world a better place, one good deed at a time, and we do so with the spirit of compassion that so many of us exhibited and brought us together after 9/11 Day. This year, we are thrilled to partner with Chef Andres and World Central Kitchen to deliver more than 35,000 meals to firefighters, EMTs, and frontline healthcare workers across the country in 35 different cities, including here in D.C. As you know, all of these meals come from independently owned local restaurants, supporting businesses that are particularly affected by the pandemic. I want to express our deep gratitude towards the sponsors who have made this program possible with their financial support. First, I want to recognize Scott Hefter, who is here today. Scott is the COO at the Corporation for National and Community Service. That's a federal agency that runs AmeriCorps and Senior Corps, and it's the federal government home for the 9/11 Day of Service. Next, I want to thank Raytheon Technologies for their incredible support as the DC lead sponsor. We have Tracy Gray here. He's the Vice President of Communications and External Affairs for Raytheon Intelligence and Space, a business of Raytheon Technologies, and also joining us is Caitlin Barron, their CSR Manager. And last but certainly not least, thank you to Principal Foundation. They are the generous national lead sponsor of this program in over 35 cities. Our Chris Payne from Principal Foundation is here. He's the Vice President and Head of Government Relations. Thank you, Chris. We're grateful for all that you've all done to make this program such a success. And to everyone here, I want to encourage you all to do something kind for someone in need today. You can visit our website at www.911day.org, and there you will see a list of over 50 diverse good deeds that you can do from the safety of your own home as part of 9/11 Day at Home. Thank you, and please let's never forget what we are capable of doing together.
Hello, everybody. Mayor, thank you very much, especially your leadership through this pandemic. I've seen firsthand how active you've been and leading this city forward. So thank you. Thank you very much. And today, obviously, we are honoring our first responders. And they deserve that rightfully. But we need to understand sometimes that when the first responders are out there on a fire, on a flooding, sometimes their own families are in danger. I've been in first-hand watching firefighters working when they lost their home and their families were in a shelter. And this is what makes you who you are. On behalf of all of us, thank you very much for the amazing service that not only you do, but all your families sacrificing very often themselves so you can keep helping people in Washington and all across America. Thank you on this day. And listen, guys, I am a cook. I've been cooking 37 years of my life. I have family in Barcelona who are firefighters. I did the military service in the Spanish Navy. And I feed the few. And chefs like me, cooks like me, we feed the few. But we saw that was important moments that cooks like us, we could also be feeding the many. I didn't realize that we could be next to our first responders, helping feed people after hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, volcano explosions. And that's what we've been doing over the last 11 years. In this pandemic, the men and women, thousands of cooks and volunteers, we've been feeding more than 40 million people across America. We've been responding to the fire explosion in Beirut, in Lebanon. Right now, in this moment, we have crews next to firefighters in Oregon, in California, making sure that as your fellow firefighters do the work, they can be fed in the process. At the end, the message is very simple. We all can be, in a way, first responders. We all can support each other in moments of disrepair. We, the people, the three most beautiful words on the creation of our country are there to mean something. Means we should always be there for each other, and especially when we can supporting the great men and women, the first responders that always are going to be there, making sure that our families are taken care of. Thank you again for including us in this. We are very proud to be able to serve our city. I am an immigrant. I'm very proud to say I am an American immigrant, and I got so much that if the little thing I can do is just trying to solve problems one plate of food at a time, imagine how easy the world can be. Big problems have very simple solutions. The only thing we need to do is follow the lead of our first responders. Use, don't plan, don't meet, show up, and stopping one fire at a time, we can be creating a better tomorrow. Thank you very much.
So may I ask Dabney Hudson and Chief Donnelly to join me here? And I'm going to follow the best practice offered by Chairman Mendelson and not handing off your proclamation. Dabney, please. But on behalf of all of us, the 706,000 residents of Washington, D.C., we recognize today, September 11, 2001. Whereas the 19th anniversary of the worst act of terrorism on American soil happened today, 19 years ago, we gather at Engine 16 to remember those who we lost that day and honor and thank the brave women of D.C. Fire and EMS, the Metropolitan Police Department, and all who served and continue to serve our city and country. We once again remember our D.C. public school students and teachers who we lost that day. And whereas Engine 16, located in the heart of our downtown, supports and protects the monumental core of the nation's capital, as well as the John A. Wilson Building, our seat of government, including the office of the mayor and the offices of the council. I, therefore, the mayor of Washington, D.C., do hereby proclaim September 11, 2020 in Washington, D.C., the September 11th Day of Remembrance. And with that, I want to introduce the representatives of our men and women to acknowledge them and remember this day, and then we'll close out our ceremony. Let me start with Dabney Hudson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. I would be remiss if I didn't thank the men and women. I'm Dabney Hudson, the president of Local 36. I represent the proud men and women of the fire department. The men and women that risk it all to keep the city and the residents safe. And I don't think it's ever more apparent than in times like this when the city's faced with unprecedented virus that has kind of crippled the city. We've had some civil unrest and some civil disturbances that have gripped our city and created significant issues. The men and women of the fire department show up every day. They have sick family members at home. They have differing opinions on things that are out there, yet they are willing to put all that stuff aside and make sure that they give their all to this city, a city that we all love, know and love. So a round of applause to all the men and women here. I appreciate it. I get to take the credit for all the great work that they do on a daily basis, so I'm fortunate in that. Chef Andres, it would be remiss if I didn't say thank you to you. It's our job to respond to emergencies in the city. It's your compassion, your care, and your spirit that allows you to respond to these emergencies as well. Following you on Twitter, following a lot of the stuff, the philanthropic work you do, not only in the District of Columbia, but across our great globe is unprecedented. So thank you for what you do. You do it out of the kindness of your heart. So another round of applause for Chef Andres as well. Like Councilmember Allen said, it's hard to believe that 19 years ago, men and women from this fire department responded to the Pentagon. It seems like it was only yesterday, but it's events like this and memorials that you see in the firehouses that keep the spirit of the men and women, the first responders that day that rushed into an emergency that never went home to their families alive. And it's something that we have to do in order to keep their memory alive and to remind that their families, that their sacrifices weren't in vain. There's several more that didn't pass away that day that are still suffering from occupational diseases that they encountered over the years of responding to these horrific incidents. And those are some of the same occupational diseases that everybody up here, Councilmembers Allen, Chairman Mendelson, Mayor Bowser, have been more than willing to support to make sure that the men and women in the District of Columbia Fire Department don't suffer like many of those men and women have over the years. So I'd like to thank you for your continued support. A lot of people like to say they support their first responders, but unequivocally I can say that everybody sitting up here has had our back. No matter what we brought to them, we've been able to work through the whatever situation occurred. So thanks again. I won't keep you any longer. Please remember those that gave their all on September 11th and the families that continue to grieve and first responders that continue to suffer the ill effects of that day. Thank you.
Good morning or good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for coming today. I first want to thank Mayor Muriel Bowser and Councilmember Brooke Pinto for taking the time and effort to recognize the brave men and women of the D.C. Fire and EMS Department on 9/11. To all of the D.C. Council members, thank you for your continued support and your recognition of what 9/11 means to all of us, but particularly to the extraordinary men and women who make up this tremendous department. To Council Chairman Phil Mendelson, Council Member Charles Allen, Chair of the Committee on Judiciary and Public Safety, and to Mary Che for putting this together over the years. Thanks to each of you. To the amazing teams connected to 9/11 Day and World Central Kitchen. So much has been said already. You guys are amazing, and thank you very much. I think it's fitting that 9/11 is turning into a day of remembrance and not a day of sorrow. That is a great tribute. Your work is very much appreciated, and we thank you for your service and commitment to the hundreds of communities and hundreds of thousands of people that you continue to help serve, touch, and heal one meal and one day at a time. I am, as are all of the men and women of the D.C. Fire and EMS Department, very appreciative of your efforts and generosity in providing meals for our members on this day. The firehouse's heart and soul is the kitchen, so when people are feeding them, it is a great tribute to the traditions that they have. Today is a day that marks 19 years since the horrific events that shocked the nation and the world on 9/11 in New York City, Shanksville, Pennsylvania, and right here across the Potomac River at the Pentagon. The vivid images of that day spoke of horror and of courage. As first responders, including hundreds of our own firefighters and EMS personnel, raced towards the disaster while others sought safety and headed home. These brave men and women did not flinch. They did not hesitate. And in doing so, over 400 responders across the nation made the ultimate sacrifice, not only on that day, but these losses continue to mount as people perish from the 9/11 related illnesses. The heroics of that day inspired a new generation to action. Some of those chose military service, and many decided to follow in the brave footsteps of the firefighters that they saw marching toward the Twin Towers and the Pentagon. Now, 19 years later, each one of us, in our own way, will find a manner and honor to cherish the fallen who themselves perform the ultimate service to humanity. Thank you.
Thank you. Chief Donnelly, if you'd like to stay up here. At this time, on behalf of the Council, I would like to present you with a ceremonial resolution to honor the District's Fire and Emergency Medical Services Department for its dedication and protection of all of our citizens and visitors to Washington, D.C., the valiant and courageous efforts to serve the metropolitan area after the attacks of 9/11. Be it resolved, the Council of the District of Columbia, that this resolution be cited as the 9/11 Emergency and First Responders Remembrance and Recognition Resolution of 2020. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So, council members, I'm going to take our kind of general on-topic questions, and then we'll take any general questions. I've invited the general manager for DC Water to join us, as well as other members of my cabinet. Actually, Chris Rodriguez, let me have you join me to give just a kind of situational update on the rains from yesterday.
Thank you, Mayor Bowser. Just going to provide a quick update on the weather event that we had yesterday. Since the early hours of yesterday, we were in constant communication with the National Weather Service as the system, some of which was unexpected in its intensity and severity, made its way to our region. We activated a certain portion of our Emergency Operations Center in order to do planning and operational coordination not only with district government agencies, but also with D.C. Water and some of our critical infrastructure providers. What we saw from roughly 1 to about 4 o'clock p.m., again, those are rough approximate numbers, was a pretty severe deluge of rain in the district. At the height of the event here in the district, we had about two dozen locations across the city where roads were closed. And again, I don't want to speak for D.C. Fire and EMS, but 46 different calls for services went out, and the brave men and women of D.C. Fire and EMS helped some of our residents who were stranded and some of the cars that were abandoned or left on the roadways in order to make sure that people were safe. All in all, no injuries, no transports, obviously no deaths. And so we were very fortunate from life safety efforts here in the district. And of course, our first responders from Fire and EMS, from MPD, from DDOT, from DPW did a great job making sure that people were being safe. What we saw throughout the event was about 2.88 inches of rain fell at National Airport, which is what the National Weather Service uses to measure the intensity of the event. This is the most rain we've experienced since 1950, so it was a pretty severe and unprecedented event. As of this morning, and I will say also that we were briefing the mayor and her team throughout the afternoon yesterday and in the early morning hours today. As of about an hour ago, all of the locations that had been underwater across the district have been reopened. We know that there are still some residents who had basements that have been flooded and some rain damage in some of their apartments and houses. The Mayor's Office of Community Relations has been working with D.C. Water to make sure that those residents have what they need and that they have the services from D.C. government. And with that, I'll turn it back to the Mayor.
Thank you, Chris. And I'd like to turn to David Gaddis, who's the General Manager for D.C. Water, to provide an update.
Thank you, Mayor Bowser. Yesterday was a tough day for us yesterday at D.C. Water, of course. As you've heard, the rains that we had were some of the worst that we've had, and from a 25-year flow standpoint for us at D.C. Water. Based on the data that we looked at yesterday, this was in the northeast boundary area was definitely the worst for us. And as you know, we are constructing a northeast boundary tunnel there, but it is not due to be in service until 2023. But in 2012, when we assessed the system here in D.C., we found that we were prepared for a 2 to 7 year type rain. We have improved that now to be, in excess of 7 year, but we're still doing some things here in D.C. in order to definitely make it better for us from a storm that we had yesterday. We received yesterday about 325 phone calls from residents that were talking about flooding in their basements and so forth and so on. We had a system that did have a surcharge. Our system at Blue Plains is rated capacity is about 500 million gallons of water per day that we can process. We had about 578 million gallons of water in the system, so that did cause our system to surcharge. We immediately put all hands on deck here in the district to check the infrastructure that we had in place to make sure that it was still running, and then we got to each one of the neighborhoods and tried to work with the citizens here in the district and work with them in making sure that we get their basements and also streets back to a normalcy. What we're prepared to do here in the district is, first of all, the neighborhoods that are impacted the worst, we will be going out to those neighborhoods and paying visits to those neighborhoods individually, because we know that some do want to hear from us and talk to us, not only about this storm, but also about what the future holds for them. And we also be holding a town hall event for all of D.C. to be able to ask questions of us here at D.C. Water. The system did not fail yesterday. The system did work well, and it worked to its rated capacity. The storm was one in which that you would have never thought would happen here in the district. So that's an overview for us here at DC Water. Thank you very much.
Questions? Questions? Yes, Mark.
Actually, Mr. Gaddis, before you sit down, if I could just ask you to, we saw a lot of manhole covers popping up throughout the city, and I'm wondering if you can explain how that happens. And I know a lot of us have been down into the new tunnels and have visualized the massive capacity. Can you put that into perspective? Were those filled during this event, and why were we seeing the manhole covers coming up?
Okay, Mark's question was twofold. He saw manhole covers come up in the city. Why? And people have seen the massive new tunnels, and how were they impacted by these rains?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for the question. As you said, we've held many tours of the Anacostia Tunnel. The Anacostia Tunnel also filled up yesterday, but it did perform well as well. If you can imagine, the 9 million gallons of capacity that we built in the Bloomingdale area, it was full by 1:06 from the gauges that we have in place. So again, the system did not fail. It filled up as it should have. It did overflow in some areas as it should have, but this was just a massive storm, and there was nothing more that we could do. The manhole covers that you're talking about, that's the surcharge that I'm talking about on the system, and it's just one of those things that does occur during these type of activities.
Staying on the flood, if I could ask the chief, just can you tell us about the rescues that your teams made yesterday, and just what the peril was like for some of the people who were trapped in their cars?
So the question is to talk about the rescues yesterday and how busy it got and the danger that people were in their cars. I think the best way to start that question is to say that turn around and don't drown is a real thing, and that we should not be driving. People should not be driving their cars into water. You should not be walking into water that's over your ankles. That the safety steps are real, and you can see the danger by all the video footage from yesterday. Yesterday, during the height of the incident, we were responding to about 98 calls at one time. Of those, 46 calls were spread out across those 4 hours as water rescue-related calls. We had about 6 spots where our crews deployed rescue boats and walked into the water and assisted people whose cars were stranded, who had either got onto their roofs and couldn't walk out anymore. It's dangerous to walk in water where you can't see. There may be a manhole cover up. There may be other hazards that trip you. So our people they're trained, and they use some special techniques to do that. Yesterday, we were very fortunate. Nobody was hurt or injured. Nobody went to the hospital. So we feel like yesterday was a good success.
All right, Mark. 3 for you.
If we could talk about the COVID numbers that came out this morning, we see the highest number of known new cases in almost a month, after we've been seeing a couple days of 25 and averaging in the 40s. Today we're up above 80 new cases. I'm just wondering, one, if the data is correct, because there have been some questions about the data that's being published, and what we should make of this. Is this a one-day spike, or what do you attribute this to?
Yes, what we have said, Mark's question was, we had, I think, 83 cases this morning reported. And your question is it accurate? Yes, it's accurate. We don't have any reason to think that it's not. If we find a need to make a correction, we would, of course, do that. What do I make of those numbers? We don't tend to make anything of one day's worth of data, but to look at data over many days.
So you're not concerned about that? You're not concerned about today's numbers? I mean, I know you're concerned about everything, but
I have no reason, Mark, to say that today's numbers represent a consistent uptick in our experience with COVID. If that, the next several days suggest that, we'll let you know the next time we talk. Okay.
Sorry.
Yes, sir.
Question on the disapproval resolution. Council members Robert White and Alyssa Silverman filed this challenging the reprogramming of some money for the inaugural review stands. Are you aware of that, and do you have any reaction to it?
So your question is about a disapproval resolution. Give me the rest of it.
You want to reprogram money.
Am I aware of it? Yes, I'm aware of it.
Do you have any reaction to it?
I will have to review what the council members' concerns are. I don't know that they've asked us any questions about it, so.
Councilmember White said the optics don't look good to be spending perhaps millions of dollars on a review booth for the inaugural parade in the midst of a public.
Well, let me kind of step back on your question a little bit. I think the question has to do with a reprogramming that we make usually every 4 years around inauguration time to construct 3 review stands to support the inaugural festivities. We did it 4 years ago. We did it 4 years before that. We did it 4 years before that. Part of the district's great and honored responsibility as the nation's capital is to support the peaceful transition of power every 4 years, regardless of who the president is. We are honored by that responsibility. It includes our fire and EMS going out and supporting the parade and activities. It includes the health department supporting the parade and activities, and it includes many other things that won't raise to the level of needing a reprogramming. And how it typically works is our HCMA begins the preparations for inaugural festivities about a year out. We've done that. And when there is a presidential inauguration committee established by the president-elect, we will begin to work with that committee as well on the activities. Part of what has been historically our responsibility that we're reimbursed for is building the review stands that you see in front of the John Wilson building, but also review stands closer to the White House that are used by the president and by the press. And I believe what we have advanced at this point is the design of those stands.
So we're reimbursed for the total cost of all those stands?
Yeah, yes.
Do you plan to attend the inaugural parade?
Come again?
Do you plan to attend the inaugural parade, regardless of who's elected?
I'm planning our support of the inauguration right now, and I have attended every one since I have been elected.
So will you attend in January?
I haven't made my schedule for January. Thank you, everybody.